It's a new day, it's early morning here in the United States, and there's a batch of brand new Path of Exile 2 information directly from Jonathan himself. Let's dive right into it immediately. But remember, if you like this type of content, please make sure to subscribe and like the video. Thank you so much for your support. The first question we have is from N7 Assassin. MTX character slots. I am a bit of what I call an altaholic. I love to play many characters instead of just one. Will character slots purchased for PoE 1 carry over to PoE 2? I am very excited to have 36 ascendancies to play around with, and I would like to be ready with a higher character slot count. But I am unsure if I should purchase them the next time they go on sale or wait for PoE 2. Jonathan hops right in and says, yeah, they will carry over. This is great. This is what they've confirmed before. Every single bit of MTX in PoE 1 will move to PoE 2 as long as it's usable in PoE 2. And the same is true vice versa. If someone buys something in PoE 2 that applies to, let's say, the Marauder class, a new type of beef Marauder, what is it called? The Marauder, that's what it is. If that's built in PoE 2 and released in the store there, you can also use it in PoE 1 if you purchase it. That's awesome. I love that they're cross-functional like that. Ooh, a controversial question here from Toasty Zeus, love the name. Zoomer playstyle in PoE 2. Flicker Strike, 300+% move speed, cast when crit, cast on crit, etc. Does anyone know if this has been answered? I know Flicker Strike is in the game, but it hasn't been clarified if we can still bypass cooldown. Does anyone know if Mark or GGG in general has answered whether the super fast Zoomer playstyle will still exist in PoE 2? I understand PoE 1 is not going anywhere, but still. Jonathan does respond immediately, and he says, the difference with Flicker Strike compared to before is that it no longer bypasses cooldown. Instead, each power charge increases the number of flickers before it ends. That means if you are able to get power charges somehow during the flicker striking, then you will still have to cast the skill again to do another stat. There is an extra windup right at the start of the flicker strike. What you would see is a bunch of faster flickers, then a pause as you wind up for the next invocation, then a bunch of fast flickers again. That said, getting charges is harder now. We are being a lot more careful with giving them out. If you want to do a continuous flicker striking build, you will probably have to be doing some shenanigans. It's not like we have designed every way to get them yet, but it's not going to be nearly as easy in PoE 1. Very interesting here. It does make sense that charges are pretty easy to get in PoE 1, and getting an absurd amount of them is possible on many builds. So the fact that they're changing the system and being upfront about it is interesting, and I'm excited to see what this is going to do not only to Flicker Strike, but a lot of other skills and builds, honestly, that relied on charges before. XX Pumbaa XX asks, what are the mechanics that might get a coat of paint for PoE 2? Somebody replies and says, hopefully using currency or crafting. The 1500 fusing recipe should be for the risk averse, not for those who want to avoid clicking 1200 times. Jonathan responds and says, the currency in PoE 2 has removed all the reasons you would need to click over and over again many times. The way sockets work now doesn't need it. The way chaos orbs work now doesn't need it either. And we removed alterations. Though for those of you who do not know, alterations are the orbs that you can spam on magic items to keep rerolling the modifiers on them. And then chaos orbs, unlike how they are in PoE 1, they actually add a mod and remove a mod. So they work like an exalted orb mixed with an orb of annulment from PoE 1. It'll be interesting. Hopefully this greatly streamlines crafting overall. Strill asks, infinite cast on shock loop? If you max out your spirit, equip a bunch of cast on shock gems, then make each cast on shock gem cast a lightning spell that shocks, wouldn't that create a feedback loop to cast all your spells every tick? Someone's already trying to bake Path of Exile 2. Jonathan responds with, I sort of thought that we were adding a socketed skills do not shock stat to that one, but I don't see it in your link. It's possible the stat description wasn't added. It seems likely that it would be too broken to allow in my honest opinion. I prefer to add that stat than to add an artificial cooldown though. I'm fine with auto bombers being possible, but I don't think it should be that easy. Okay, so the auto bomber playstyle will be in Path of Exile 2, confirmed. Righteous Fire is going to be there. Good to hear, Jonathan. Thank you. This is a juicy one, Exiles. Bavin Gadasso 27 says, skill tree refund. Will we be able to refund all passive skill points and refund multiple times, somewhat like Diablo 4, which is one of the only things D4 exceeds PoE, or it'll be as clunky as PoE 1? Honestly, it is a shame that we can't get very creative with the skill tree, which is massive and overwhelming in fear of screwing your character permanently. Jonathan gives a meaty answer here, everyone, and let's really think about what he's saying here. I'm honestly open to an idea about how to solve this problem. I think full resets suck. Beyond like level 15, it just feels like you nuked your character. I actually hate logging into an old character and having the skills reset. I always feel like I screw up the allocation. I think the natural evolution of I need more defense, I need more cast speed, I need more damage, driving your decisions as you go through the game is kind of important. When I get a full respec, I always feel like my character is off afterwards. Sure, this concern is less relevant to those following a build guide, but then people doing that don't have the excuse of making mistakes either. I think a limited number of full resets suck even more. If it's okay to do once, why is it not okay to do unlimited times? Okay, so why not free spec? Well, at that point, what even is your character? I'm not saying regrets are a great solution, but it sure is hell better than all the others I know of. I kind of like the idea of being able to free spec specialization points, the ones you get from skill books, but when you think about it, it's very hard to let that happen in a way that isn't a total eldritch nightmare of a UI. I know people will hate this, just like they hate my opinion of being able to skip the campaign is terrible, but I do think he's right. I like having a sense of permanence in the character, and if you need to update your character, you need to invest into that, even if it's just Orb of Regrets. The weight is real in this sense, and I'm glad that Jonathan is standing his ground, but saying, hey, if people think of a better solution, we are open to hear it. We are collaborating with you. We are building this game with you. He has said that on multiple former threads saying, wow, that's a great idea. We might implement that. Thank you. So it's possible that'll happen here too. Make sure to pitch all your ideas to him. Now, somebody responds later on in the thread saying, there's no reason why running a successful build would be better at teaching the mechanics than running a bad build. Failure is often the price of learning. This is a sentiment that I don't fully understand when talking about the new player experience. Are we actually worried about players learning, or are we worried about players actually reaching the end of the campaign? Giving free respecs or even putting guardrails around an ideal new player build does nothing for learning, and I'd argue hand-holding a player through the campaign and then dropping them in an endgame they're not prepared for isn't doing them any favors either. By all means, make things intuitive and as streamlined as possible, but I don't think we need to overprotect new players, as they'll have to learn to figure out things by themselves at some point. Getting stuck halfway through the campaign isn't the end of the world. Jonathan responds to this individual and says, I agree with you. We get suggestions for this kind of thing all the time. Literally today, I was arguing with a marketing person about this very thing. I don't think the game should ever tell you what build to play. Then he quotes them saying, new players have a problem understanding the mechanics. Jonathan says, well, the mechanics of the tree are simple. You get a skill point, you click a node, you get the stats. I don't think anybody has trouble understanding that. So therefore, it must be the mechanics of the stats themselves that are complicated, right? But are they? When you look around the tree, you mostly see stats like 10% increased spell damage, 10% increased physical damage, or 10% increased area of effect. This is not exactly rocket science. Sure, there are some more complicated ones out there, but I'm sure it's probably a few percent at most of tree nodes that are not immediately obvious what they even do to the biggest noob. So what is the problem then? I don't think it's a problem of understanding mechanics. There is a lot more I could say about this, but unfortunately I find it hard to actually assemble what the root of the problem is. I think that there is a UX issue here for sure, but what can really solve it? So Jonathan is really going hard there on his opinions and his viewpoints, which even if you disagree with what he's saying here, and I know many people will, I am super glad that he's not backing down. He has a viewpoint, he's standing by it, he's not saying, oh, you know, you're right, we have to submit, we have to change this. No, he's saying, this is my opinion. Of course, there are flaws. I'm open for ways to improve. Give me ways to improve. I'm working with a team of many developers on this. I'm racking my brain. How can we improve this while keeping true to the spirit of Path of Exile and its unique DNA? Super interesting question from Baka Grappler. When will the first League mechanic be, and how will Atlas to influence content be tested in beta? Jonathan says, my first instinct is that we will probably not want to have a new core League mechanic when PoE 2 officially launches, but it will depend. We'll have to see how we feel when we get there. The endgame during beta will not be as big as it will be at release. We plan on adding back-in League mechanics during the course of the beta, one by one. And then somebody immediately follows up and says, I know it's a different question, but is mapping still an integral part of Endgame in regards to the base experience? I feel like you guys mentioned it in one of many videos, but just wanted to refresh myself. Jonathan simply says, yes. Very interesting that they will not have a League probably upon launch, but they will be adding lots of the former leagues back into Path of Exile throughout the beta. And the confirmation that mapping is the cornerstone of PoE 2 is fantastic. I hope they start with the Atlas passive skill tree still. Londor T59R17 asks, Vaal gems and armor blacksmith currency. Since I haven't heard about Vaal gems in PoE 2, will Vaal gems with 6 links be very rare, or will GGG create new currency or use tainted currency for it? What does armor/blacksmith currencies do in PoE 2? Since in PoE quality of an item increases the socket and link chances, since links and sockets are moved to gems instead of the items. Jonathan says, I think we might not have tainted currency, at least not at the start. It would be nice for corrupted to be corrupted again, at least for a while. A Vaal 6 link would be hard to get due to that. I believe we made the quality currencies rarer and moved to being more of an endgame thing. They don't have a huge amount of value during the campaign, in my honest opinion. So a few things have just been confirmed here. 1, corruption, still in PoE 2. That means Vaal orbs still in PoE 2. Also Vaal gems, it sounds like are in Path of Exile 2. And also, now they're moving all the increasing of quality to making your gear better at endgame instead of throughout the campaign. Interesting. I wonder how we'll be able to earn them. I'm guessing it's just going to be from drops now and not from selling items, but we'll have to see. Okay, I've saved what I think is the most interesting question for last. Here we go from Eatern76. Returning content. I've read in another post that the idea was to adapt some of the existing endgame PoE 1 content leagues and give them a new twist. Approximately how much of PoE 1 leagues will make the cut? Jonathan says, I am keen to try and get most of the PoE 1 content in there. Some things will go in a way that is quite different from how they were in PoE 1 though. I have a pretty good idea about which leagues we will be adding. Not going to make a list now though. There will be new endgame content on launch, but possibly not in the beta. We will have to see how much time we get. Wow, most. So that means 50% or more of the league content will be in PoE 2 from PoE 1. That is significant. We're talking Delirium. We know Delirium will be in PoE 2 actually. We're talking Blight, Heist, the Forbidden Sanctum, Essences, Strongboxes in some form, Ultimatum, Betrayal, Alva. There's a ton of stuff that could be in PoE 2 at launch. That's going to be insane with the brand new campaign and endgame tied along with it. That's all for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that new look at PoE 2 and all this information that we're getting from Jonathan. If you haven't already, make sure to visit that subreddit, subscribe to it, and really ask your questions to Jonathan. He does seem to be answering most, if not all of them. Anyways, that's all for this video. Tala Moana, Exile.